At 4:42 in the morning on the 18th of June 2021, Deputy Kyle Fangman pulled up to a farmhouse 7 miles west of Traer, Iowa. What he found inside would stay with him forever. A woman was sitting on top of her husband's body in a recliner, screaming, rubbing her face against his. Ryan Cooper had been shot twice in the face. His blood covered her cheeks, her hair, her clothes. She was hysterical, inconsolable, performing grief for anyone watching.
Where's the firefighter? And what happened? He's dead. Where's the guy with the got shot? My brother in the living room. With the other deputy? No.
Ryan Roy Cooper was 42 years old, a fourth-generation farmer who'd spent his entire life working the land his family had cultivated for decades. Born in Waterloo, Iowa, in 1979, he'd grown up alongside his brother Aaron and sister Michelle on the family operation. From the time he could walk, he'd been kicking around in cowboy boots, farming from the living room floor with his toy tractors. Friends described him as quiet, generous, the kind of man who'd leave his own property in a disaster during a storm to help a neighbor. He loved Iowa State Cyclones football, cold bush lights, and customizing anything with a motor. He'd married Karina Alpers at Zion Lutheran Church, and together they had 3 children. They lived at 1846 K Avenue, a rural property where Ryan farmed alongside his brother Aaron, who lived about a mile away. The evening of the 17th of June had been ordinary. Karina spent time with the family at a local sports complex, picked up pizza, and returned home with Ryan and the children around 8 p.m. Ryan settled into his recliner in the living room, his usual sleeping spot. Karina put the younger children to bed upstairs, but cell tower records told a different story about what happened next. A phone passed the Cooper home 3 times between 9:04 and 9:40 that evening, and in the days before, Karina had told her teenage son to stop sleeping on the living room couch near his father's recliner. She was clearing the area. At 3:31 a.m. on the 18th of June, Karina sent a heart emoji on Snapchat. Her lover replied. Then came the exchange that would later destroy her in court. The message read, "Remember those casings, no ifs, ands, or buts." Under 15 seconds later, Karina responded, "Absolutely 100%. He followed, "Okay, babe, seriously putting the phone down. Have to get this done." At 3:32 a.m., he told Karina his phone was going down and wrote, "Love you." He also instructed her not to contact him until after he left her home. Approximately 1 hour later, between 3:32 and 4:30 a.m., Ryan Cooper was shot twice on the left side of his face with a .22 caliber rifle while sleeping in his recliner. Both shots were fired at close range. Gunpowder searing was visible on his skin. The state medical examiner would later determine that both wounds were independently fatal with no exit wounds. Ryan never moved from the recliner after being shot. Blood flow patterns showed he remained reclined after the shots. He died where he slept. At approximately 4:30 a.m., Karina called Ryan's brother, Aaron. Not 911. Aaron, a volunteer firefighter who lived minutes away, immediately called 911 himself whilst racing to the house. The Tama County Sheriff's Office received the call at approximately 4:35 a.m. During the call, Karina could be heard screaming in the background. At one point, she handed the phone to her teenage son and told him to talk to the dispatcher. Deputy Kyle Fangman arrived at the Cooper home at 4:42 a.m., about 7 minutes after the 911 call. Aaron Cooper had arrived first. What he found was a scene that would leave horror images in his head for years. The living room was dark. Ryan's body was in the recliner, and Karina was on top of him. Karina was sitting on Ryan's body on the recliner, rubbing her face against his, covered in his blood, screaming and crying. She was not performing CPR. Ryan's body was already cold to the touch. The blood on his face was drying. Aaron checked for signs of life and found none. Deputy Travis Foster described Karina as almost completely inhibited, so emotionally overwhelmed she could barely provide information. Yet prosecutors would later argue this behaviour was a calculated performance. Karina's phone was found on the right side of the recliner with its torch turned on, suggesting she had been active at the scene in the dark living room before calling for help. The crime scene told a story that didn't match a random attack. There were no signs of forced entry on any door, window, or the garage. No items of value were missing. Valuables were left in plain view throughout the house, garages, and vehicles. On the floor near the recliner, investigators found one .22 caliber shell casing. One shell, despite 2 shots fired. And no firearm was found anywhere at or near the scene. A .22 rifle in the family's gun safe was tested and ruled out as the murder weapon. The couple's 3 minor children, approximately ages 5 to 12, were all inside the home. Karina told deputies she heard a loud noise, thought she heard her husband snoring, called out to him, got no response, then went to the living room and discovered the scene. She maintained her marriage was in a good place and denied any affairs. DC 1 Special Agent Ryan Herman, who conducted the first interview, noted that Karina seemed to be crying, but he didn't see any tears. For the Cooper family, the questions were immediate. Who would want Ryan dead, and why? The investigation was conducted jointly by the Tama County Sheriff's Office, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, and the Tama County Attorney's Office. But as weeks turned into months, no arrests were made. Karina denied any extramarital relationship. When investigators first asked about a man named Houston Danker, she became upset, yelling, "The neighbor? My friend?" and attributed any rumors to an accidental Snapchat. She claimed she had trouble accessing the family's gun safe and had never shot a gun, contradicted later by her 2016 carry permit and friends who discussed firearms with her. She never voluntarily mentioned Danker to investigators. His name surfaced only when another interviewee brought it up. During a May 2023 interview with DC Special Agent John Tubet, Karina gave a timeline of the night Ryan died, but conspicuously omitted being awake at 3:30 a.m. or messaging anyone. When Turbot asked about electronic evidence, she became irritated and told him to leave. As he walked out, she declared that if she knew who killed Ryan, she would have killed that person herself, and added she was hiring a private investigator. 6 months after Ryan's death, on the 22nd of December 2021, Karina received a check for $514,882 from Shelter Life Insurance. She cashed it through Chelsea Savings Bank, used the funds to pay debts, opened 2 business storefronts in Traer, renovated her home, and moved to a new property about a mile from where Ryan died. All things Ryan had opposed during his lifetime. Bank loan officer Brad Rend later testified that Karina's accounts had been repeatedly overdrawn before the murder. For nearly 3 years, the community waited. Ryan's sister Michelle began writing notes for a victim impact statement just 1 day after the murder, the day the family learned who was responsible. But investigators were building something. Houston William Danker was approximately 24 years old, 19 years her junior, and a client at Karina's home salon. She worked part-time as a salon owner and stylist from their rural home, cutting hair for local clients. In approximately late 2020, Karina began an affair with Danker. By September 2020, Ryan had removed Karina from the family business phone plan, a growing sign of distrust. Ryan's sister Michelle later found in his personal files a phone bill page with a post-it note reading Houston D and a phone number. Evidence Ryan was tracking the relationship. His best friend Leroy Bradley testified that Ryan told him about the affair in March 2021. In his first 2 interviews, Danker denied any romance with Karina, describing their relationship as her gay best friend. He acknowledged rumours in Treya, but said it was simply because she cut his hair and babysat his kids. But when investigators recovered Snapchat messages through forensic analysis, the truth was far darker. The messages between Karina and Danker painted a picture of obsession. They exchanged declarations of love, fantasized about getting married, discussed having children through IVF. Karina called Ryan a sperm donor. When Danker sent an explicit message, Karina responded, "Here's hoping for a rogue semi today. Big accident, no survivors," referring to Ryan. Multiple friends testified that Karina had been verbally hostile to Ryan, particularly when drinking. She resented that Cooper Farms controlled the family's finances whilst she repeatedly overdrafted her own bank account. Friend Carmen Earhart testified that Karina complained Ryan could use farm money to buy things, but her money went to food and expenses for their 3 children. Friend Kirsty Cedar said Karina talked about taking Ryan for everything. But the Snapchat messages revealed something worse than resentment. They revealed a plan. On the 11th of May 2021, 5 weeks before the killing, Houston Danker searched Google for ways to kill a person, killing someone with antifreeze and sodium sulfate, and killing someone without them knowing. After Ryan's death, in July 2021, Danker searched where murderers go to prison in Iowa, medium security prisons in Iowa, how long forensic data analysis takes, how to delete Snapchats, how to get away with murder, and the #1 lawyer in Iowa. 4 days after Ryan's death, Karina's Snapchat account was deleted remotely after her phone had already been seized by investigators. At his August 2025 guilty plea, Danker acknowledged to the judge that he and Karina were lovers and had planned the murder together over the course of 4 to 5 months. Witnesses came forward with details that made prosecutors' case stronger. Teresa McBride testified she heard Karina say she wanted to shoot Ryan in the face around 2018. Leroy Bradley placed a similar statement in autumn 2020. Brian Morrison, Ryan's best friend, testified that in autumn 2020, Karina told Ryan directly, "I could shoot you in the face." Morrison said the comment was sharp and deliberate, not a joke. Morrison also witnessed Karina telling Ryan, "I hate you, wish you were dead," on multiple occasions. The criminal complaint stated Karina Cooper told 2 witnesses she wanted Ryan Cooper dead and could shoot him in the face. The murder weapon was traced through a co-worker. Bradley Seek testified that Danker gave him 3 guns in late 2023, claiming he was moving in with a girlfriend who had a daycare. Among them was a Ruger 10-22 rifle. Sayak kept them for 6 to 8 months before turning them over to the Tama County Sheriff's Office in spring 2024. DCY criminalist Kristen Hart conclusively matched the shell casing recovered at the crime scene to that specific Ruger 10-22. Hart also testified the firearm cannot fire accidentally. With each pull of the trigger, a round is fired. They'd planned it all, but they'd made mistakes. Remember those casings, no ifs, ands, or buts. The message Danker sent at 3:31 a.m. on the 18th of June wasn't a random instruction, it was a reminder. Karina was supposed to collect the shell casings after she shot Ryan. All of them. She was supposed to leave no forensic evidence behind. But when investigators processed the crime scene, they found 122 caliber shell casing on the floor near the recliner. 1 shell, despite 2 shots fired. She'd missed 1. That single casing became the thread that tied the murder weapon to Danker's Ruger 10-22 and ultimately to both defendants. Cell tower records showed Danker's phone had passed the Cooper home 3 times between 9:04 and 9:40 p.m. on the evening of the 17th. His phone was near the property when the murder occurred, and the Snapchat messages sent 1 hour before the 911 call were the final piece. Absolutely 100%, Karina had written. She knew what was about to happen. She'd agreed to it, and she'd failed to clean up the evidence. The life insurance policy provided the motive. The Google searches provided the intent. The Snapchat messages provided the conspiracy, and the single shell casing provided the proof. On the 19th of February 2024, nearly 3 years after Ryan's death, Karina Cooper was arrested at her Traer home by the Iowa DCY Major Crime Unit and Tama County Sheriff's Office. She was charged with murder in the first degree and held on $1 million bond. She pleaded not guilty on the 14th of March 2024. Houston Danker was arrested on the 29th of April 2024 in Cedar Rapids, charged with first-degree murder for acting in concert with Karina. His criminal complaint stated he told investigators he planned and assisted Karina in carrying out the crime. The community that had waited for nearly 3 years finally had answers. The trial began on the 1st of July 2025 at the Lynn County Courthouse in Cedar Rapids. Prosecutor Michael Kodiaga told the jury the evidence would show Karina was not just an unfaithful wife, but a co-conspirator, a planner, a murderer. Defense attorney Nicole Watt delivered a strikingly brief opening, roughly 2 minutes.
Houston Danker. Houston Danker killed Ryan Cooper. Houston Danker shot Ryan Cooper in the face. Houston Danker solicited Karina. Houston Danker manipulated Karina. Houston Danker lured Karina. Houston Danker had Karina living in a dream world. Houston Danker killed Ryan Cooper. You're gonna see some Snapchats. You're gonna see some pictures. You're gonna see conversations about IVF. Dream world. IVF, she's got her tubes tied. Houston Danker killed Ryan Cooper. Karina Cooper was in a dream world, and then it became real, and then she was in too deep.
Over 6 days of testimony, the prosecution built its case through forensic evidence, digital records, and witness after witness. Ryan and Karina's teenage son testified that his mother had recently told him to stop sleeping on the living room couch near his father's recliner, days before the murder. On day 6, Karina Cooper took the stand. She described her marriage as good and normal. She admitted the affair with Danker, but framed it as a fantasy gone wrong.
Houston acted like he was my husband and Ryan was my boyfriend. It was an online fantasy, like going to a chat room or playing video games where you steal cars and shoot at cops. It was an online fantasy thing, and when it became a physical in-person thing, I was disgusted.
She claimed Danker was threatening and said she lied to investigators out of fear, not guilt. Prosecutor Ringel's closing argument zeroed in on Karina's behavior at the crime scene.
Why would you sit on your dead husband who had just been shot and rub your face all over his face, directly over the wounds, soaking your face and hair with his blood? Because you shot him, and you're covered in backspatter, which you did not anticipate, so you had to come up with a pretty quick plan. This was what she came up with. She's guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt.
The jury began deliberating at approximately 1:18 p.m. on the 11th of July, 2025. At 5 p.m., they returned. Guilty of murder in the first degree. Karina was visibly emotional. At 5:03 p.m., she was handcuffed and led from the courtroom. On the 12th of August 2025, moments before jury selection was set to begin in his own trial, Houston Danker pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. His attorney said Danker wanted to accept responsibility for his role and spare his family, the Cooper family, and the community the ordeal of a trial. On the 19th of September 2025, Judge Lars Anderson sentenced Karina Cooper to life in prison without the possibility of parole, mandatory under Iowa law for first-degree murder. The impact on the Cooper family was laid bare in victim impact statements. Aaron and Heather Cooper are now raising Karina and Ryan's 3 children alongside their own. Heather's statement was devastating.
I sat in that vehicle hugging them fiercely, their aunt. Nothing but pure love and fear inside. How does a mother look at her child with fear in their eyes every day and not say anything?
She described Aaron's trauma as the first person on scene.
I watched my husband live in fear those first few nights, unable to sleep in our home. Being first on scene left horror images in his head and unable to sleep.
Michelle Wilson delivered the family's final message.
There is no sentence for you that would adequately punish you for your evil, vile, selfish, delusional, and narcissistic actions. I will waste no time and no energy in addressing you about that. My full, complete, and final message to you is go to hell.
Danker was sentenced to the same on the 3rd of October 2025, plus $150,000 in restitution to Cooper's estate. His attorney said, Houston Danker was blinded both emotionally, spiritually, morally. It led him to aid and abet Karina Cooper in the murder of her husband. Judge Anderson told Danker, "You'll have plenty of time to think about that.